U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo today in Jordan began a whirlwind eight-nation diplomatic tour of the Middle East, with further stops including Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Egypt. Now, likely topping the agenda will be the U.S. pullout from Syria, but there are other issues expected to be raised, including the Yemen war, the Saudi-Qatar rift, and, of course, in Riyadh, the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Here's what Pompeo had to say today in Oman.
There is, I won't speak for Foreign Minister Safadi, but there is enormous agreement on the risk that poses to Jordan and to other countries in the neighborhood, and that battle continues. The President's decision to withdraw our folks from Syria in no way impacts our capacity to deliver on that. And you'll see in the coming days and weeks, we are redoubling not only our diplomatic but our commercial efforts to put real pressure on Iran to achieve what it is we set out for them back in May.
Well, for more, let's go to Washington and speak with Richard Schmierer. He's the former U.S. ambassador to the Sultanate of Oman and also former Deputy Assistant Secretary in the State Department's Bureau of Near Eastern Affairs. And, Mr. Ambassador, is it fair to say that a big part of Secretary Pompeo's trip is, in essence, damage control following that U.S. announced pullback from Syria?
Well, of course, I think it's very good that the Secretary is visiting several Arab capitals. It's important that we consult with our Arab allies as we've been consulting with others, for example, National Security Advisor Pompeo in Israel. So we do need to be consulting with all of our allies in the region in connection with our plan to eventually withdraw our troops from Syria. But the fact that those consultations are taking place, I find very encouraging.
But what do you think that Secretary Pompeo is going to be able to reassure those nations, or most of those nations, that this is let's say, a well-thought-out strategy or correct strategy for the U.S. to pursue in Syria?
Well, I think as we've seen since the initial time of the announcement, we've seen various developments such as a timetable which now seems to be much longer than originally announced, and conditions such that we will be coordinating with our various allies in the region in order to ensure that the right conditions are there such that ISIS and the extremists do not have the ability to regroup. So the fact of a longer timeline and more consultations and conditions gives me hope that this will be done, and frankly an expectation that this will be done in a way that is successful.
Ambassador Schmierer, I'm sure you've heard earlier the reaction by President Erdogan, basically harshly criticizing John Bolton, even personally, and rejecting any notion that Turkey will give assurances to the future of the Kurdish forces there that did fight with the U.S. against ISIS. What's your reaction?
Well, of course, I think it's unfortunate that the two didn't get to meet today in order to actually have a discussion about exactly those issues. To me, I guess I would say I see it currently more as a sort of a war of words. I think ultimately we will be on the same page as our Turkish allies, and we'll be able to get there in coordination with the other stakeholders, Israel, the Arab countries, and others who have similar interests to ours, and that is, of course, ensuring that ISIS and the extremists are defeated, and also ensuring that Iran does not have the capability to do malign activities in Syria going forward.
And Mr. Ambassador, Secretary Pompeo will be going to Saudi Arabia and has just talked about getting updates about the investigation or this trial going on regarding the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. How seriously should we take the administration's intent to see some kind of justice done in this case?
Well, of course, the administration, the president, and others have indicated that they do expect the Saudi government to be forthcoming in terms of just what happened, who's responsible, and to hold those responsible accountable. We have begun to seeing reports out of Saudi Arabia about legal processes getting underway. So I'm sure that the Secretary will remind or encourage our Saudi friends to continue to be forthcoming to ensure that the full facts and full accountability become known.
Now, Mr. Ambassador, of course, a priority for the administration is building an Arab alliance against Iran in this region. It is interesting that Secretary Pompeo is going to Qatar, which has been at odds with its neighbors, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. Do you believe or think there could be an effort to try to bridge that gap? And how successful could the U.S. be playing a mediator there?
Well, I think given recent and ongoing developments in the region, in Syria, in Yemen, and elsewhere, have sort of underscored the importance of resolving that rift. I think it's important to us, it's important to our friends in the region, and certainly to our Gulf partners, that we all be working together to address the challenge that Iran presents to the countries of the region. So I think there is a recognition of the need to really make a renewed effort to resolve that rift and to get everybody back together again.
And, of course, a couple of these players, Saudi Arabia, UAE, are deeply involved in the civil war in Yemen. There's been a lot of pressure put on the Trump administration to try to at least tone down the fighting in that nation. Do you think that will be an issue be pursued?
Well, certainly, I'm sure the Secretary will emphasize that in his visits to the various Arab capitals. Obviously, the humanitarian crisis in Yemen has received renewed attention in recent weeks, and even our own Congress has made its views known on that. So I think everyone is aware of the need to really begin to bring the Yemen crisis to a resolution. And I think the fact that the Secretary will be in as many countries as he is, and I think back to my own time in Oman, I think Oman would be a country, for example, that could play a positive role in trying to find a way to end the disastrous conflict in Yemen.